Baldurs Gate 3 is anti-Semitic because it has a swamp witch in it that eats children. And apparently the Mary Sue elected to take this personally on behalf of the Jewish community. And, you know, for once, I'm genuinely intrigued as to how these data points match up. I want to see the connection here because, you know, normally with the progressives' racism, I can see at least the outlines of their logic. It's like, orcs are black-coded, and I can be like, okay, I can see the racist stereotype you are basing this off, but Jews and baby eating. I don't know how these two intersect, so I look forward to being illuminated, I suppose. I mean, it had to be something, didn't it? So the title here is, this Baldur's Gate 3 plot is unable to shake harmful fantasy tropes. The original title was Auntie, Ethel and Antisemitism in Baldur's Gate 3. But, well, that title seemed to stretch credulity just a little bit too much, so they rewrote it into something slightly more clickbait-friendly, as of course Baldur's Gate 3 is all the rage these days, and initially it was warmly embraced by the progressive audience because, well, you could have sex with actual literal animals in it, which, well, we know why that was so appealing to them. Bestiality is probably the closest that the majority of them will ever come to intercourse. But Baldur's Gate 3 also proved to be a surprisingly good video game as well, and so it was embraced by everyone. And by and large, the left aren't particularly fond of anyone else enjoying, well, anything in general, so I had to find some way to attack it. We've had the tieflings being black-coded, as they say, and therefore the racism is terrible, and now this. So, okay, let's make the connection, shall we? Between my 65 hours in early access and 70 hours since release, all still in Act 1, I am clearly a big fan of Baldur's Gate 3. Ah yes, the hello fans. Fellow fans, I am one of you, and therefore you must listen to my well-based and entirely, you know, not at all uncharitable or malicious critique. It is ridiculously flexible for my playstyle. The stories are intriguing and the consequences feel real, but I'll have to take the world of all the regular RPG players about how boundary pushing this is, as a person who really doesn't play this genre. All I know is that it's a lot of fun in every way. Still, as a piece of art, it has its issues. Aha. A piece of art. Now, I'll be the first to admit that, yeah, video games absolutely can be artistic, but I think we are going to differ on our definition of art here. Since my first playthrough, one major issue is a side plot that has disrupted my ability to sing this game's praises without a caveat. That is the implementation of a common fantasy trope steeped in misogyny and anti-Semitism. A common fantasy trope. Unless they complete the Goblin campaign first, players will find their first major boss fight in the Sunlit Wetlands. After passing some roll checks and starting blah 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 blah, turns out she's been making deals with wretched people and screwing them over for her own gain, that is Ethel the Swamp Hag. Her most recent victims, family, Demir and Joel, are desperately trying to rescue their sister, Marina. When you find out why, it goes downhill so fast, I seriously kept telling myself maybe more context will make this not what it appears. What possible context is one of my questions, but never mind. After losing her lover and father to the future child, Marianne works out a deal with Ethel. Ethel, a witch who transforms into a swamp-like hag. Well, no, she is a swamp-like hag, but she literally is a hag, not just a witch. She is. Never mind details. I am explaining D&D lore to somebody who could never care or bother with it. With resurrected Connor in exchange for Marina's child, who shall teach magic. Well, Ethel reveals plans to eat the child to make a hag daughter. If this plot of a magical person who shares features with historical anti-Semitic caricatures of Jewish people, I present to you a Jew, according to the Mary Sue. Trading or coercing someone to give up a child that will be consumed in some way sounds familiar. It is because it is. Okay, I must admit this is a part of history I am not particularly aware of, and unsurprisingly, because apparently it stems back to 600 AD, with the most recent being 1144. William's family blamed Jewish people, accusing them of a ritualized blood sacrifice of Christian children or an observance of Passover. The conspiracy theory stuck around past the Middle Ages as an effective scapegoat tool during turbulent times. So, we've talked about grievance archaeology. We have talked about grievance history. I think this goes beyond that. We are now at grievance AD. We have arrived at a point where you need to dig back into the thousands, the 600 after the death of Christ, to find some sort of reason to look at this and go, well, that's clearly a Jewish stereotype. Is it? I mean, they mentioned misogyny as well, so I guess it's being judgmental against witches, swamp hags. See, this is one of those big problems that D&D has overall, and they mention this as well here, that this is not a thing that's new to D&D. D&D is steeped in anti-Semitism, you see. Any kind of upheaval, economic, social, political, etc., has consistently been blamed on Jewish people, since this includes art and story, like fairy tales. Now, that is true, though it's been a while since this was a generalized thing, and particularly the baby-eating part, I feel. This trope isn't the only strike against Ethel for anti-Semitism. It's the strongest in a growing list. She transforms into a described less humanoid creature with an elongated nose, like every witch in goddamn history, basically. There's a literal poison well sitting outside her tea house. Is that another Jewish stereotype? I am learning a lot about Jewish stereotypes today. All of the in-game consequences are limited so far. As a fraudulent businesswoman, even with Mariana, as you see by using the one bitter divorce, which resurrects her husband, but as a corpse, tish. Also one of the most common tropes, I think, ever in these devil's bargains. Ethel also evokes the tropes of the greedy cheat. You are reading a lot into this, aren't you? You are reading a real lot into this. If it was just one of these things, it would be kinda iffy, but it's the combination that really makes it hard to ignore. God, help me. Like when Japanese media is criticized for problematic content, I anticipate some will think that I'm just projecting American ideas on another country. Oh no, I don't think these are your American ideas. I think this is actually just your progressivism, desperately looking for the slightest shred of grievance in literally everything, to the point where you see an obviously inhuman swamp hag monstrosity, literally a non-human monstrous entity, driven by greed, hunger for life, and thirst for violence. She is evil, she is literally evil in the most actual, unflinching meaning of the word. Well, until they got rid of allegiances in D&D, I suppose. And you go, oh, a Jewish person. Hey, I'm starting to see how the Nazis rose to power so easily. Their target audience has, well, quite a lot of imagination, shall we say. In light of this game's more nuanced takes on other stand-ins for marginalized people, like tieflings mirroring the Jewish people, Romani people, and Black Americans. I was joking earlier. I guess I wasn't. Tieflings are Black Americans. Hey, I'm not even saying that I think the problems with Ethel were intentional. Oh, they were. They absolutely were intentional, as in they were there to represent her as a hag, as an evil creature within D&D lore, not, mind you, as Jewish people. I very much so doubt that was the intention. I don't even still intent only gets you so far. I didn't mean to say this was a Jew, says the game developer, while shaking his head. Meanwhile, the Mary Sue goes, well, that's not good enough because I see Jewish people everywhere. With letters in around the tea house indicating similar hags across Faerun. Maybe a sister with a name starting with M. Well, I don't know. I don't think those were the hags. I think that's somebody else, but details. Regardless, this is another example of storytellers failing to confront underlying issues of prejudice in the genre. They're exploring, and even in a game I'm thoroughly enjoying, that's worth discussing, and it's not a new complaint for Dungeons & Dragons, there we go. These scribes aren't just about doing better for progress's sake. Right now, many of the beliefs held by people in or around QAnon blame Jewish people or dog whistles for them, or contemporary conservatives. Honey, this isn't QAnon. This isn't the evil conservatives. This isn't even the Nazis sitting here looking at this and going, aha, a Jew. It's you. Like, you are. I am pretty sure you are the only one. I'm actually fairly certain. Because, like, failing to confront underlying issues of prejudice, you had to dig back in the 600 ADs for this nonsense. We have to go back plus 1,000 years to find this underlying prejudice. It could just be a fantasy monster. All I'm saying is, everything doesn't have to be a commentary on race, or religion, or politics. Sometimes a baby-eating monster is just a baby-eating monster. Just say, you know. If you're finding this issue, you might be the problem. If you had to go through Google to find this image of what I presume to be Jews burning and eating children because a video game had a hag, you might be the issue here. It's entirely feasible, it's entirely possible, in fact, it's overwhelmingly likely, indeed, that this is a very much so personal problem you have right here. And hey, I get it as well, you know, video games can absolutely be commentaries on real-life events. I view, for example, the inclusion of the ability to screw actual literal animals as a bit of an indication of the developer's somewhat fetishistic outlook, shall we say. But at least that's contemporary, rather than, you know, a few 1,000 years plus ago. God damn it. Now, to be fair as well, even the woman herself is like, oh, I don't mean any of this. I mean, I'm not to say this is bad or anything, but I was paid to write a clickbaity article for our core audience who might happen to see swamp hags as Jews, and I had to find some angle, okay? You know, don't shoot the messenger. Fair enough. But really, couldn't you at least go from this from a misogynistic perspective? You know, people hate women because they're witches. I'd be more inclined to believe that because at least she is observably female. At least they must create, you know, female children. You don't have male hags, etc. I would have bought that more than Jew. On the bright side, I suppose far-right extremism is alive and well on the progressive side yet again. Remember, Mussolini was a leftist, and as you can quite clearly see, they have many, many interesting things in common. Baldurs Gate 3. An anti-Semitic video game, and shame on you, dirty chud, for enjoying it. Have a good day.